Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pentester Recruiter podcast. This week's episode, I'm joined by Tim Medin. Tim, how you doing?
Good. Actually, it's Tim Medin. That's all right. No one ever gets it right.
Sorry, I think I'm practically dyslexic, so you'll have to let me off, but there you
Happens all the time. No one ever gets it right.
Okay, I feel better already. But yeah, no, Tim, thanks for joining. Just going to do, Tim, a bit of an introduction. I'm looking forward to this week's episode. Tim is a SANS instructor, so we're going to explore that. He's also the CEO of a company called Red Siege and has been for almost 6 years. Yeah, so done you a little bit of an intro there, Tim, but if you can, I'm sure you can do it better than me. Who are you and what have you been up to, mate?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you mentioned Red Siege. We do pen testing. I have been doing pen testing myself for well over a decade. I keep meaning to do the math, and I never do. Or sorry for you listeners abroad. Maths. The lead author or the author of the SANS 560 course, the Enterprise Penetration Testing faculty. I try to get out and do a lot of these talks at conferences, things like this, just to give back because it's been such a big contributor to my personal life and, of course, my career as well.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I think since the advent of remote working, I feel like I'm the same as you. I think we need to do more because years ago, I'm sure from a self-development perspective, being in the office was probably better. Look, I love remote working, but I think since the advent of remote working, that community spirit kind of needs to be there more than ever, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, and the nice thing, too, is there is just so much information out there. A lot of the conferences put the talks out for free. There is just so much out there. In fact, it's almost a problem that there's so much, and you have to try to sift through some of that. And you need a librarian of sorts for the internet to find all those resources. But the nice thing is, with those talks, is there's no travel, right? You can skip the boring intro in the beginning. You can play the whole thing at double speed and then skip the piece at the end. So you can get through a lot more content in a short amount of time. Of course, accessibility. You can put in an audio format while you go for a run in the car, on the train, whatever you might be doing. So just a tremendous opportunity. Again, the biggest problem is there's sometimes too much.
Yeah, definitely. Your office commute's probably similar to mine. Mine's just down the corridor about 10 meters that way. So it's great.
Oh, I got stairs. So I got a little bit of a hazard in the morning.
Very good. Well, dive straight in. In terms of initiatives online, I know Wednesday Offensive is yours and Red Siege's initiative. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how the listeners might benefit from that from a career progression and growth standpoint?
Yeah, we've really tried to create it as a small community type of event that we do it on a regular basis. We do it every single Wednesday. The exception is if like Christmas lands on a Wednesday. I think we've done other holidays where it happened to land on a Wednesday. We still showed up, limped in, whatever. But the nice thing is we keep it to 30 minutes and we are strict. Like people don't have a ton of time. It might be the middle of the workday, lunchtime, whatever. People don't have time for that hour. And of course, people love to do hour-long things because I don't know why. So we try to keep it close-knit. We allow the attendees to turn their mics and cameras on. And we get industry experts from all sorts of different places, mostly on the offensive side. We've got defenders. We've got some forensics. And we get their candid views and perspective on things. And again, that live interaction is really nice. We try to create as much as we can that lobby con, if you will, in 30 minutes. And our rule is no slides allowed. No slides are allowed. We had one person bring up one slide, but technically it wasn't slides plural, so we let them go. We don't record it so people can be much more candid, much more open. Okay. But we just want a place where we can just sit around and ask questions about things, whether you're very senior, whether you're junior, whether you're red, blue, purple, whatever your day job is. We really try to have it open for everybody and get a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, cool. So if I'm listening now, Tim, and I'm thinking, great, I'd like to get involved. What's the easiest way for me to do?
Yeah, the simplest way is Wednesdays at 1:30 Eastern time. That's, of course, U.S. Eastern time. Mm-hmm. We do our thing. It is, you can get the link, redsiege.com/WEDOFF, WEDOF, short for Wednesday Offensive, and just hop in. There's no commitment. We don't spam you. It's just pop in, talk to some folks, pop out when you're done. Again, we try to keep it real tight to that 30 minutes because people have other calls and food, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, cool. What we'll do as well is we'll put a link in the show notes to this. So when it goes on, I've just put this on Spotify yesterday. So we're on Spotify now, YouTube channel, and I'm always promoting things on LinkedIn. So we'll get the links on the YouTube channel and the Spotify as well. So if anyone's listening and they can't quite grasp what we've said, don't worry, it'll all be in the show notes. So yeah, moving on to the next question. So SANS instructor, very impressive. There'll be some of my listeners are my clients, but a lot of my listeners are pen testers. I'm sure there's pen testers listening now that have got plans to take SANS certifications. I know there's lots to choose from. And I know there's probably certain things you can and can't say, but can you give us any hints, tips, or advice when it comes to the certs? Or
the certs themselves, I don't know. They don't let us see them because otherwise we would unfortunately teach to the test, if you will. And it could kind of ruin the experience there. Yeah. But the big thing is, and this is cheesy, this is cliche, this or any other class, you get as much out of it as you put into that, right? Plenty of different offerings out there with lab exercises. Make sure you walk through those, you understand those, and understand, why am I doing this? Not just follow the step from A to B to C to D, whatever, but think, why am I doing this? Why does this make sense? Why is this the right process there? Yeah, I've taken plenty of different classes from all over the course. Of course, as you mentioned, SANS, that's my baby, that 560 class. But there's a ton of opportunities just all over the place, at, of course, different price points as well.
Yeah, okay, cool. And is there any cert in particular you should start with, Tim, in terms of like difficulty level, any kind of cert path that you would recommend within SANS? Or
yeah, the sort of, again, maybe cliche answer is start with what you're interested in. I'll say though is what I typically see for the people going through the 560, the enterprise penetration testing course path, is many people will oftentimes start off with the 504 incident responder class. They get lightly into pen testing. It used to be that they were very overlapped. Josh Wright and myself had done a lot to try to prevent that and remove that, for lack of a better word, stigma that's been out there that they were too similar. The course, though, as it's been written, as I've written it, it's designed to help pen testers be better, but it's also a lot for IT people, blue teamers, people who are trying to secure their network, defend their networks, understand like what are the real high impact attacks that are out there? How do they work so that we can all collectively work together to keep the real threat actors out of our organizations?
Yeah, cool. And just to pick up on your answer to the last question, you're saying, like I say, don't just do it to pass, actually do it to like genuinely understand it, because at the end of the day, it is about an investment in yourself and your career progression. If you're doing it just to get the letters after your name, it's probably not the best.
Yeah, I mean, we've all met those people with fill in the blank certification, and you're like, wow, that is one of the dumbest human beings I've ever met. And they understand the tactical pieces. It's like understanding individual words, but not being able to take those words and put them into a sentence. So whatever the path is, it's really important to understand, why am I doing this? What is the progression here? What is the ultimate goal here? And not just, this is the command I run because this is what I was told. Why are you running that? Why are you using these specific options? What are you trying to get out of it because you're using these specific options? What are the limitations with the way that you're running it? Are we going to go faster? But we might miss things, right? There's always going to be some trade-offs with that.
Yeah, cool. And also as well, Tim, just going slightly back to the top of the conversation here, but I think it's worth mentioning. At the start we were saying, and I really agree with you, there is so much to choose from in terms of learning resources these days. If I'm a pen tester listening now, if I was to strip it back and say, what are your kind of maybe go-to 3 or 4 or top 5 or however many you've got in your head, what do you think that the best areas to focus are online in terms of resources? Any go-to areas for you?
I don't have a great answer for that. The answer used to be Twitter, but we've unfortunately seen that kind of fall off a cliff. And before the whole thing that's going on with Twitter right now, we've just seen, maybe over the pandemic, it was the biggest, but we saw just less and less maybe useful content. We're seeing a lot move to different Discord channels where it's a little bit more interactive. There's a lot less noise, right? For better or for worse, fewer people posting cat pictures. right? Like if you go to this specific community, whatever Discord, and you ask questions specific to,
Mm,
right? And so I've seen a
mm,
lot more of that. I've seen a lot of an increase in the private chats. So like just a group of friends where they invite people in because they don't want some of the additional noise
mm.
or troublemakers that are out there creating some of that. But the Discord channels, I think, are a great start if you don't know some of those people.
Okay, cool, cool, brilliant. So moving on to the next question. So you're obviously CEO of Red Siege. You employ pen testers. I'm sure you've seen a lot of guys and girls that are okay, a lot of guys that are exceptional. What in your opinion? Quite a big question, but in your opinion, what traits and characteristics are required in today's market to be a really successful pen tester?
Yeah, the biggest one is this interesting to you? Is this a passion? And what I don't mean by that is, do you spend all your outside hours researching pen tests? If you do, fine. But that also can lead to burnout if you don't have a good balance. If your work turns into your hobby, you never have a nice split between those things. A lot of especially for us, because we do pen tests for other organizations, a lot more customer facing than your traditional sort of pen tester. But a lot of the soft skills are very important. Can you effectively communicate? Writing skills. Everyone wants to do the latest and greatest cool hacks, but if you can't effectively string together sentences and the grammar to write the report, you're going to miss out on a lot of that. The speaking, presenting, very useful. I know a lot of people get very scared about that. Totally okay. But there's a lot of those skills that I think are really important. There's a couple of things that we really, and this is a cheat maybe if any of you ever interview with us, is there's a few things that we always try to do during the interview. And one is ask some questions that are really hard. And the simplest thing that I want is an I don't know. Because there's nothing worse, and I've seen it plenty of times where someone just starts to just BS. Give me
Yeah.
an I don't know. There is power in saying I don't know. There's strength in saying I don't know. And if you want to bump it up a notch, you could say, you know what? Here are places that I might go to solve that problem. And if you're super intent, you could follow up in an email afterwards. But just real simple, when we're working together as a team, because it's all teams, whether we like to think so or not, just being able to self-filter your own BS is super important. And honestly, being able to trust your teammates. If they're giving you an answer that they're not going to just give you an answer for the sake of giving you an answer, they're going to say, you know what? I'm not sure either. But let's dig into this. Here's some places we can look at. Here's how we can solve some of those problems.
Yeah, no, cool. That's a really good insight. Yeah, just having the confidence to say, I can imagine in an interview, someone's nervous, they really want the job, and they just kind I can imagine it now.
Yeah.
It's not what you want.
Yeah, but it's a self-awareness. One of the things that, and this is a story about me, and it's not a great story, but like when I was a junior pen tester, much less experienced, I was extremely confident. I knew the answers to everything, whether I knew the answers to everything or not. And we all work with those people who are the experts in the room, and we give them that expert status, one, because they know things, but they also understand what their limitations are. So you don't have to feel like you have to answer all of the questions. Say, I don't know. Do some research. Another thing that I get people all the time is, and this isn't just in interviews or at work and stuff, but just simple stuff like literally, have you done a Google search? Have you done just the basic bare minimum to ask the question? Because I get questions all the time, and plenty of people in industry do, like, how do I get started in pen testing? And that's a long answer, but there's a lot of resources that are already out there. And honestly, my story is dated. I've been doing this for well over a decade. My path will not be the same as any of yours because the industry has changed. There was no programs, there was no school, there was no education, no college, university for cybersecurity. It did not exist. Like my most senior guy at Red Siege was a music major. And I've got a music major, I've got a journalist major, a couple of IT related or tangential. My background is electrical engineering. And I hate saying this when people ask, but I'm like, I'm not the best answer for you. I am too far removed from that to give you a story. One, I've forgotten, but it's different now. It's drastically different. We didn't have all the same ways to stream this information, the books, the content, the different Slack or Discord channels. It just wasn't there. So I don't have the best perspective on it. I love to try to answer that because I want to help people with their careers, but I'm not the best person to answer that question because I don't know, old at this point. I'm out of date.
No, Tim. In fact, there's loads to unpack there, and you've talked about the importance of communication skills, technical writing. Obviously, we touched on the interview. We talked about balance in the workplace. We talked about having the confidence. We talked about not asking questions where you can clearly Google the answer. And you're not the first guest that I've had on that said that. And I get it a lot. I get DM'd all the time on LinkedIn. And I'll give you an example. If someone was DMing you, if they went, I don't know, I've been on Hack the Box, I've been on Try Hack Me, I've been on Hack Tricks, I've been on Portswigger Web Academy, I've attended Offensive Wednesdays, but I'm not sure about this, you'd probably be more inclined to answer. Whereas if people are just really lazy, it's...
Yeah, and the irony is the more specific you ask the question, the better answer you're going to get. People are afraid, I don't want to steer the conversation. And I totally get that. So they'll ask a very broad question, which in like my LinkedIn chat box, I can't answer that, right? I can't respond in 140 characters or whatever it is now, but I can't respond to that. But if you ask, hey, I'm doing this and this, what do you think about these couple of options? The more specific, the better answers you're going to get. And also people will say, also, have you thought about this other thing? So a specificity in those questions is important. It allows the person to answer it to give you a very direct answer, a better answer than this very broad, come with me, kids, let's sit down and hear the story time with Tim for the next half an hour on different options. And it's just so much information, you get overwhelmed, which we talked about before. The more specific, if you have questions for people, the better. Because I see we've got our own Discord channel, redsiege.com/Discord. People come in and ask like a very broad question. It goes unanswered because the response would be just massive. Yeah. And you nudge them, can you be more specific? And then like you'll see people just jump on that answer. So that those specific questions, because someone's going out of their way to help you with that answer, help them help you to some degree. And it sounds, I don't know, maybe it sounds egomaniacal, but it really does help them give you better answers if you can be more specific in those questions.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Tim, by the way. I think the other thing is, in cybersecurity, in offensive security, everyone is so busy. I can remember when I first started recruiting in this space years ago, I just couldn't get over how busy on the client side, especially if you've put no effort into something, I think people are that busy. They don't mean to be rude, but it's like, come on. And it's like, you just don't get a response. It sounds a bit harsh, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah. And I see those and I want to answer like a Discord, LinkedIn, whatever, Twitter. And I'm like, I can't take the time to write the multi-page document to respond to this very broad question. There's just not a great way to do it. It's like Twitter, for example, doesn't even give you a way to respond to something very broad like that. So the more specific, and people are always very willing. I see people are very willing to answer those questions, but help them out. Help them give you it. Help them fit into their schedule so they can give you the answer that works best for you. Otherwise, people just end up giving you broad, honestly useless answers because it's not going to be specific response.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, thanks, Tim. So to summarize, make the effort, show you've given it some thought, perhaps, like I say, niche your answer down so it's just not really open-ended when in a busy environment, and that kind of increases your chances of standing out from the noise. And I think, remember, like mentorship is a two-way thing. It can't just be all takes. It's got to be a mutually beneficial thing, really.
Yeah, you got to be prepared to get the answers. Yeah. Right. And put the effort in, figure out what the pieces you need. And it might mean that you take your big, very broad question and you're breaking it down. So I want to get to cybersecurity. Where should I start? Now think about that yourself. And okay, what pieces do I think I need? Do I need books? Do I need training? And then you can maybe ask that one specific piece. Hey, which of these couple of options, book, online training, certifications, in-person trainings do you think is the most valuable for me? Cool. Quick answer. Someone can respond to it. Then whether it's that person or somebody else, you say, hey, what do you think are the top couple of books, the top couple classes, the top couple of this, and break it down so that people can give you a very specific and honestly quick answer, because people are busy, they've got life, and you're going to get a much better response there. And you'll need to steer the conversation, right? You don't see like the TV reporters, right, on the news or something even like this, where you're like, Tim, just go talk for the next 30 minutes. It's very pointed. It's very directed. There's a feedback. There's a response, instead of tell me about pen testing, because this would be very boring if that's what this conversation was.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. That's good. That's good. I think just as well, just to pick you up on another thing, that last answer, we talked about communication skills, soft skills, technical writing ability. I don't know what your thoughts are, but the best pen testers I know that are great on the technical side and the communication side, they do things like this, what we're doing now, or they do public speaking. And like when I was coming on this pod today, Tim, like I did feel nervous. It doesn't matter how many I do, I always feel nervous, but I always remember that when you feel uncomfortable, it means you're growing and it means it's doing something good to you. So my kind of thought process is just get outside your comfort zone. I don't know if you're in agreement or if you've got any other suggestions on how people can get better on the communication piece.
I could not agree with that more. I hear people all the time like, I want to present. Okay. I mean, you literally have to do it, right? I need to lose a couple of pounds or more. I just need to go to the gym, right? And eat differently. And that's very simple things to say, take some lifestyle choices, but whatever. But I hear people all the time, they're like, I'm not sure what to present about. Well, pick a topic that's interesting to you. John Strand, good friend of mine, pulled me aside a number of years ago, and he said, Tim, why aren't you giving talks? And I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't have some brand new 0-day vulnerability to talk about. And they're like, Tim, who cares? Because if you did this super high-tech talk, there was going to be 3 people in the audience who are going to understand it, and only one person in the entire audience who is going to need that. We need the much broader things, right? Like I talked about with my class, I get 5 to 10% are pen testers in that class, right? It's not just that. And honestly, if you're doing a presentation and people aren't interested in that topic, they're not going to show up. And that's honestly a gift, right? That is a gift, because it means that everybody that is watching, everybody in the room, they are pulling for you. They want you to do a good job. My first presentation, it was supposed to be an hour-long presentation. I finished it in 15 minutes and 36 seconds. I got this diarrhea of the mouth where I was going faster and faster. And I noticed it. And I'm like, cool, I should probably go faster. And I'm like, wait, I'm going really fast now. I want to fix that by going even faster. And I looked, and I saw my friend, my boss, my mentor, Ed Scotus, and his jaw is dropped. Dude, slow down. I'm like, got it, faster. Yeah. And I say that because the first time you try something new, you are going to suck at it without question. And you have to embrace that, right? We see children learning to walk. They fall a lot, right? No one expects the first time you do this thing for it to come out flawlessly. Like I said, though, everyone's pulling for you. They want to hear your perspective on these things. At Red Siege, we've got a lot of different blog posts and webcasts that we do. The ones that get the most hits for us are the simplest ones, because there's a much broader reach. There are more people that need those. The super high tech, without question, lower hit count. Mm-hmm. And it's tools and techniques that are already out there. Mm-hmm. So if you do a presentation, a blog, whatever it might be, put your spin on it. Why is this important to you? How did this help you? Why does this matter? How did it help your organization? And it doesn't have to be fresh and new and the most advanced thing ever. And I hate to use that because it's making it sound like your presentation won't be useful and interesting. It will be. Mm-hmm. Like I said, people, if they're in that room, they're pulling for you. They want you to be successful. Everyone is on your side. No one wants to see you absolutely to drop the bump. That said, though, first presentation is going to be a little rough.
Yeah.
The next one, it's going to be a little bit better, and then a little bit better, and a little bit better. And both of us have done this a lot of times, and it's taken me hours and hours and hours, quite literally thousands of hours of presenting and speaking classes on how to do this stuff. And I think I'm really good at it now. But it was absolutely not at first. It was so bad. It was so bad.
I've got an off-the-cuff question for you. Is there any recordings of this 15-minute chat that was meant to be an hour?
There is not, thank God. And if you did watch it, you had to slow it down to like half speed. It was bad.
No, very good. Do you know the easiest way I describe it? If I talk about it in recruitment terms, I think there's so many benefits because I think it's good for your confidence, it's good for your communication skills, it's good for the community because other people get to learn off you. It reinforces what you know already, so it's good for you. But also in terms of an application, I describe it as your resume becoming like a 3D resume. Like I can remember there was, and I told this story on a post, but there was a client I had in New York. We were up against some other recruiters. The pen tester I knew really wanted this job, but he had a YouTube channel. He had loads of recordings of him hacking web apps. I'd interviewed him. I knew he was really good. And we included that with his resume, his channel, video recordings of him, and he got the job. And I'm sure it was because his application wasn't just a resume going into the employer. It was like a 3D virtual kind of, they got a real feel for him before they met him. So I think from a career progression standpoint, job application standpoint, I think the benefits are endless. And I think, I mean, you're obviously an employer, Tim, so I don't know what you think, but I think employers are starting to almost expect that. Like if I sent you a resume for a pen tester and there was just nothing on social or nothing on GitHub, I would imagine you'd be quite probably concerned like these days. I don't know, are you expecting it more these days? Kind of.
Yeah, see, I don't think it necessarily, this might sound weird, I don't think it necessarily works against them to not have it, but if you do have it, it's free points. Honestly, that story that you mentioned about that tester getting the job because he had the other stuff, that was my experience. Literally mine. I got my job because I was doing some blog posts with some other folks, and they were aware of the blog post, and it bumped me up to the top of the list, and I got my first pen test job because of it. And you don't have to present. I was just writing. Yeah. But it also showed that I could put together coherent sentences succinctly to explain this thing. And it was something I was doing in my spare time. I would spend maybe 30 minutes a week putting this. It was the Command Line Kung Fu blog, if any of you remember that from many moons ago. But it helped tremendously. At least in my situation, there are always extra benefits. Because otherwise, if you've got two pieces of paper and you're trying to compare them, it's almost impossible, right? Like you can't really tell. But if you've got these little extra couple of bonus things, it really shows that, hey, beyond this resume, because you might have a professional resume writer, that they can actually write stuff on their own. Or if they're going to be talking to clients, hey, they're going to present well and speak well, succinctly, clearly to the clients, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah, cool. And I'm imagining the Kung Fu blog, I'm imagining that helped your technical writing from like a report writing standpoint and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The rule for that blog was people gave us ideas for things to do, and we were writing one-line commands in, it was Linux, it was PowerShell, and it was CMD, good old CMD. And we tried to keep it very short, so it was readable, very succinct, a little bit of fun banter in there. But I really learned, like, how can I break down the explanation here as short as possible and be succinct with it? Right? Because I could give this very long, extremely detailed, but no one's going to read that. It's not interesting, right? We've all seen documentation that technically has all the answers, but it's 75 pages and it's unreadable. I like the greatest example is the PHP documentation versus the Python documentation. The Python documentation is terrible. PHP, very simple, very succinct, easy to read, much easier to digest. I probably made some people mad. That's okay.
Yeah, we like a bit of controversy,
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
worry. We're getting quite granular here, but I do think this will benefit some of the listeners. So you said a few things there about basically just getting to the point. Are we basically saying that when it comes to producing a report and technical writing, that technical or non-technical stakeholders, they want as few words as possible, and they want you just to get to the point? Is that right?
Yeah. Think about it when you're consuming information, right? Like, you don't need the extra stuff in there. Yes, sometimes it adds flair, but put that someplace else. Give me the best description that you can in the fewest number of words.
Okay.
Right? My favorite quote, and I forget the quote and the author, but it is, "Sorry this letter is so long. I didn't have time to write a shorter one." Because there is effort in reducing and making it as minimalist, if you will, as you can, but still telling that same story, still describing a finding, an issue, whatever that might be. And I personally find myself being a little long-winded at times, so I try to take that one to heart.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, I thought you were going to say that, but I just wanted to, let's say, I think for the listeners, there'll be certain people that perhaps aren't aware of that. But yeah, again, I think it goes back to a busy environment. One of my previous guests, she was saying that the executive summary is so important because some stakeholders will just read that. They might flick through the rest of the report, but they'll probably just read the exec summary. So it becomes quite important.
Yeah. And the piece I see in with that executive summary, weird things, because you're like, it says executive summary. It should be a summary for executives. People are like, what? You just use the same words and switch them around. Yeah. I've seen like a 4 or 5 page summary. Like, if the summary needs a summary, then yours is not
Yeah.
right. Like, the president of the United States gets a 1-page briefing. If that man can get a 1-page briefing and go through that to do his day, I think you can get your executive summary down to a page or a page and a half.
Yeah.
And I've also seen the executive summary use very technical terms. Like, we use this to get access to the domain controller, then I use Mimikatz to grab this thing, and I've got the password hashes and the other thing. And technical person's like, what the hell are they talking about? Like, keep it at that executive level. Remember who you're talking to. Don't tell the executive to install the one missing patch. You're telling Mr. or Mrs. or whatever CSO to grab their keyboard and mouse. Let's go patching. Right? No, the issue is a process has failed, whether it's patch management or asset inventory. Give the guidance at that level. It is a summary for executives. Keep it a summary. Keep it executive level.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you, Tim. I think that's really helpful. So, in terms of the kind of ideal pen tester you'd be looking for, maybe I'm a mid-level guy or girl, maybe I'm even a senior pen tester looking to improve. What is your kind of ideal profile that you like to see? Do you like kind of certifications, web app, mobile? What's your optimal profile these days?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. We're still relatively small. We're at 14 people now. So I'm still trying to figure some of those pieces out. The big things that differentiate for me is there's the technical piece, right? If you got a senior person versus an intermediate person, obviously the senior person has those more skills. But are there, as I mentioned, some of those soft skills? Is one a better communicator? Is one a better writer? Is there that interest that you see? I've got a guy on my team, Justin Polk, who came to us who hadn't really done pen testing before. And I was a little bit worried. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. Now, he had done, and the big thing that sort of 2 big selling points as a quick aside. One, it was friends of friends. Okay. So it was someone who knew somebody. And I say that some of you are like, I don't know anybody. Get in those Discord channels. Like, we're talking to someone in a Discord channel that we might hire, at the end of the year or something like that. Get into that. Get the community. That it's not what you know, it's who you know. There is something there. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, play that game a little bit there. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and this goes back to the earlier point, like he was a Sands Net Wars champion, like champion of champions, tournament of champions winner, which is a big deal. Showed up. He's been here for almost 2 years, and I promoted him to senior last week. So he just absolutely crushed it. That willingness to help, the willingness to learn and dig into those things. It's honestly that I talked about it before, that passion. If you can figure out a way, and I'm not saying I'm good at it, figure out like, is somebody interested, or do they have the skill set to learn and develop some of these things on their own?
Yeah, no, cool too. I think as well, like, I know balance is important and burnout's a real thing, but sometimes that people almost can go too much the other way if we're not careful. Like whenever I speak to a really good senior, which is a very frequent basis, even to this day, that they don't finish at the end of the day and then just sit up on the sofa and go and chill out. They are on it. They're all over it. They're not obviously pushing it too hard, but I think you've got to have that. You've got to be going above and beyond if you want to be above average. I think you've got to do more than average and push yourself. I think these days that's almost a controversial thing to say, which is a bit crazy, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and to that, one of the things, we've had a number of people in the last 6 to 9 months that have switched positions, who are mid or senior, where they're like, the organization really wants me to develop myself, but I'm not getting any opportunities. So they're not investing in their people either, which is, if you want your people to get better, you have to give them the time to go to take classes, whatever that means, the resources to do those types of things, the time away from billable projects to get those things done. And it's part of it's just self-fulfilling for folks. And like I said, we had a number of them where like, I just want to learn some of this at my last organization. And you think about it, and this isn't a dig at recruiters, but recruiting is expensive. There's the process, like trying to backfill a position. You now are missing a body for multiple months, right? Whether you've got internal staff for recruiting, or you go to a third party for recruiting, there's costs there. And literally for a few $1,000s, they could have kept this person happy. And they made the choice that, no, we have to keep it billable. And then it just fell apart. They saved that penny, but they lost the dollar in the process. And now they got some new person, they got to train them up in the process. And you've got tens and tens of thousands of dollars in that process, however it looks, to replace the person, where just give them a little bit of something to help them fulfill what they want to be and where they want to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. The opportunity cost of not having a project filled is obviously huge. And you know what? There's loads of, it sounds a bit cliche, but there's loads of sayings. If you're not growing, you're dying, all these kind of things. And I'm the same. Like, I'm actually looking at a recruitment coaching, and it's like, I've been doing it for 6 years, but you get a real buzz, I think, over anything, over money, over anything. When you feel like you're progressing and growing and moving forward, and you get to the end of the week, it's a hell of a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not like with pen testing, with some other, maybe other professions. With this, the technology changes, and it's changing constantly. The tools are changing, the techniques, right? We've got the recent, air quotes, a recent advent of the cloud, and more going there. Like, this is an industry where you have to stay on top of it. And if you don't want to, fine. There's plenty of things where, that are a little bit less dynamic, but this is extraordinarily dynamic field, for better or for worse. I, as a person who has a very, very limited attention span, I like the changes. Although sometimes I'm like, can we just take a break for a minute? Can we slow down for just a moment? But we very much, if you want to stay in this, have to keep up with these things, because it does just change so dramatically.
It does. It's funny you mentioned cloud. Cloud just seems to be, it was massive anyway, but it just seems to be getting even more so. And demand, I'm noticing demand on clients for cloud skills. There's something I'm going to mention, actually. I've been speaking to a candidate today who's wicked. She's wicked on cloud. She was talking about Cloud Goat. So it's like I think it's from Web Goat, but it's Cloud Goat, vulnerable at AWS. But apparently that's very good for sharpening up the cloud skills. But it's just, it seems to be an area where everyone wants people that are mega at cloud. But it's just trying to catch up. I remember when I first started looking at AWS, the language, it's like starting over again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't just name it a VM. It has to be called an EC2 and all that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So just flipping back to Offensive Wednesdays, I've looked at stuff that you're doing online, Tim. I know you've done some stuff on AD pen testing, EDR evasion. Is there anything, little snippets, or I know you might say, come and join us and find out, but is there any little snippets you can give the listeners now, or any particular sessions that you've had that have been like really good from a self-development perspective that have really helped people? Any kind of additional insight you can give us there? Or
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is, and we've made an intentional decision to not record any of those. So, like, we had just a number of them. We had one from the Bloodhound folks where they talked us through the process. Somebody else, and I'm terrible with names, so I apologize in advance to our guests. But one of the authors of Sliver, a C2 framework, came in and talked about his thoughts behind recreating that. We had one which I honestly thought was going to be the single worst Wednesday offenses we ever had, because the topic was attacking Windows 2000 computers. And I was like, what? And it was fascinating. We're like, quick, add us to our standard methodology to look for some of these pieces. So it's all over the place. We get some of the forensics people to see, or incident response. Hey, what's it look like from the other side? We're offensive. We're breaking into organizations. What does that look to the other side? What are we doing that could get us caught? Now, we want the real bad folks to get caught, but oftentimes as offensive people, especially on the red teams, we're tasked with evasion. And we have to think about some of those things. So it's important to get this perspective of people who are in a similar industry, but a little bit different. And we see this kind of thing all the time in just science in general, right? Like behavioral economics. It was economics combined with psychology, and they created this big thing, and it now like has revolutionized all of that, right? So getting those different perspectives, not even just within security, IT, frankly, even broader than that, really helps a ton.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mentioned this before, but I think that attitude of just I'm a red teamer, that's it. I think that's a dangerous place to be. I think it sounds to me like obviously there's some blue team stuff, there's some full chain. If you're going into building C2s and stuff, there's some kind of full on red team stuff there. Obviously, you've done the AD stuff, but I think to have that blue and red team and have that more holistic approach is never going to be a bad thing. It makes you a better offensive professional.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we've really focused on with our hiring process is I like the people who have a background in IT, because if they're talking to the client, writing the report or whatever, like they understand, hey, you know what? I've set up or managed a lot of Exchange servers. I know this is how to interact with it. They also understand the importance of uptime and the reliability and the care that needs to be taken, because they've been on the other side of that where they may have been on call, right? And understanding those processes, those systems, how they're managed, how they're operated, really does give you a great perspective on how to attack those systems as well.
So are we talking help desk, sysadmin?
Yeah, I mean, we've got folks on my team have been system admins. We've had a blue team, especially since I've been doing this a long time and we didn't have a ton of pen testers way back in the day. We all started off on our different IT path because it does give you a very good, very rich experience. And I think, and I don't want to scare people away, but if you come out and you just know red teaming, you're missing the bigger picture. You're going to miss a little bit on how to communicate with the people that you're attacking, miss a little bit maybe on understanding the importance of some of these systems and how they play into the entire environment of the target organization.
Yeah. If anyone listening, by the way, Tim's not that old. He keeps referencing the fact that he's really old, but you're not too old, buddy. You're okay.
Computer terms, I am.
Yeah, to a teenage hacker, you might be. Next one. I know this can be a trick. It can be a podcast or a book, but what pod or book or audio book or whatever we call it these days? Which one has had the biggest, most positive effect on your cybersecurity career so far? Would you say?
That was a tough question. For those of you watching along or listening along at home, you gave me the question up ahead of time, and I spent way too much time researching these types of questions. Honestly, I think the biggest ones that helped me aren't specifically security or IT related. I listen to a lot of like Paul Security Weekly to get some of those kind of podcasts. I listen to a lot more of especially now running the company because I'm trying to figure out how to run a business. But one of the great ones that I really love is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winning behavioral economics, whatever it is, about when you're analyzing a situation. Take a second, because your initial gut might trick you because you've been literally tricked by what you've seen. So take a step back, because I can't tell you how many times, especially in pen tests, where I see something and I immediately jump on this thing and I end up spending hours, or unfortunately even days, on the wrong path, where if I take a step back, it's, oh my gosh, the answer is right there. It's so obvious. Yeah. So I end up trying to understand holistically, not to be cheesy, but understand myself and my own limitations so that I can correct any biases that I might have to help me be more effective, not only at pen testing, but at just life in general.
Thinking Fast and Slow, did you say? Yeah.
Yes, by Daniel Kahneman.
I think even on, if you're talking on a business or commercial sense, even the old, like, an email comes through and you reply straight away. I've always been, just wait a day. If you're annoyed, just wait a day. And I think it's I'm getting better at that as I get a bit older as well.
I'm the worst at that. I'm the worst at that.
We've all done it. Okay, cool. Yeah, and so a lot of listeners are, I think I said at the top of the show, there's kind of pen testers. I know there's internal recruiters that have DM'd me that are listening. I know some of my clients listening that are business owners, maybe pen testers that are listening that maybe want to get into business. The question is, in a nutshell, you've gone from being a software developer to a business owner. I'm imagining there was a lot of trials and tribulations on the way, a lot of ups and downs. I don't imagine it all to be plain sailing. Have you got any tips for anyone that is transitioning into being a business owner or going through that?
Yeah, I'd love talking about this. This is my big focus these days. I've been taking classes now on that from a prestigious business school to help develop myself. I'll give you the single best advice that I got from a great friend of mine, John Strand. Don't do it. Now that you're not going to listen, and these were his similar words. I know you're not going to listen, but here's how it goes. Now, the easiest piece with any business is the technical piece, right? As a pen tester, like if I'm pen testing for one organization, I can now pen test for my own organization. That's the easy piece, right? But there's the complexities now I have to write my own statement of work, and I have to write the MSA, and I've never written a report with my company's letterhead and style. I don't have a logo yet. I don't have a website yet, right? There's a lot of those pieces that take a tremendous amount of time. In fact, much more time than I even thought, and I tried to estimate high. Those pieces, the first clients are difficult. My suggestion on some of that is if you can subcontract or work from somebody else to give you some basic money to run on your own, save up some money, whatever that might be. Now, to contradict myself before, this was a need that I had to do this. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, especially on my dad's side. They all do this. It was something I always wanted to do, but I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And the biggest reason was health insurance. Now, I know listeners outside the US are like, let's just provide it. A little different here. But once I finally took that step, I found it extremely rewarding. Difficult. Like, it took me 4.5 years to get to a good vacation point, but now we got a great team and I can disappear for a week and they take care of me, take care of the company. But if that's something that you're really interested in, take a shot at it. And it might be that you start off doing it in your spare time. And again, it's going to take a lot of time to get the website, get those pieces as you develop that customer list and eventually transition over. It's by no means simple. I have found it to be incredibly rewarding. And honestly, different governments, they're really incentivizing you to start the businesses. There's a lot of benefits there. I absolutely love it. And I wish I would have done it sooner, would have been my answer.
Cool. The don't do it advice, is that because it's going to be pretty hard and you need to almost just... Yeah. Is that what that is? Yeah.
That was literally it. Like the friends of mine that have done it, and they literally independently told me the same thing. They're like, look, just be aware. When you take a vacation, you're not really going to be on vacation for about 5 years. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And it was literally like 4 years and 10 months when I finally got like my first real good one. I was like, oh my God, they nailed this thing. Because it's your baby. There's no one to cover for you if you're not responding to email, right? This report, you're the only one writing the report or whatever it might be. You are the one and only single person to do that. Now, it's important to be able to delegate, outsource, use other resources to multiply your time. Use the 99 designs or design crowd, design your website, get a good logo. But there's a cost associated with those things. And transition is always a little bit old, especially if you're trying to save money when the business isn't making any yet.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks, Tim. This is often a controversial subject, but certifications within offensive security. What's your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. The big one I always hear about, and I'm trying to be as agnostic as possible on this, but the big one we always hear about is the OSCP. People love that one. I've never taken it, not because I'm a SANS instructor, because I don't want to take a 48-hour test. I think that's ridiculous in the modern work environment to take an entire weekend to do something like that. Bias exposed now, the SANS. I like the enterprise pen testing course with SANS. A lot of hands-on, a lot of instruction in person or virtual with that. The OSCP, their famous thing is try harder. I hate try harder. Help me. Like sometimes I need help. Not to dig on it, but I've heard, and I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard a lot of people dig on the CEH. The Security Plus is a little bit better, a little bit broader of the certification, but the two big ones I hear are OSCP and the related ones, as well as the GPEN.
Yeah, I think the CEH just gets it because of the multiple choice element, doesn't it? But the CEH Master's a bit more practical now and seems to be a bit more highly. But in relation to, I always just think that OSCP is just whether it is the best or not. It's just so many HR people. That's all they know. So and things take a while to change, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So I noticed on the website there's an article about Slither. I know we talked about it about 10 minutes ago. In terms of Cobalt Strike, best C2s, building your own C2s, what do you think is the most sophisticated C2 strategy for a red team, a full chain red teamer to be adopting in the current market?
Yeah, that's tough. And if you ask me today, it'll probably be different literally the end of this week or next week because it's so fast. A lot of the people I know are still using Cobalt Strike. Now, you can't just use it off the shelf. You will absolutely get caught. It takes tweaking. The nice thing with it is it's reliable. It works. There's nothing worse than working really hard to gain access to a system and having that agent die, and now you have to do it again, which isn't going to work well for a fish. Yeah, can you click on that email again? It's just simply not going to work. There's a lot of public ones that are available. There's Mythic, there's Sliver, there's Covenant. Great resources. Just like Cobalt Strike, though, they're becoming a victim of their own success. The better they become, the more likely the bad guys are going to use it, which means it's more likely to get caught, which then makes it less effective. So I'm seeing a lot of organizations either fully or partially developing some of their own C2 to do some of that, or heavy tooling around existing tools. For example, as I mentioned, we use Cobalt Strike, but we've got a lot of ways to really customize that to get around all the different defensive products.
That sounds like a good compromise. Whenever I do a post on it on LinkedIn, some people are like, Cobalt Strike's rubbish because everyone knows it. And then some people are like, no, it's not because that's what Black Hats use, so it's more realistic. But it sounds like bolting a few things on, customizing it could be like a really nice middle ground.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's trivial to do. And the problem is, in the past, you'd see blog posts, tweets, videos, whatever. This is the steps to take to get around the antivirus. And we're seeing that the defensive products are getting better at adjusting to that. So we're seeing a lot more of that discussion go to ground, where it's a little bit quieter. You have a little bit of you got to know the people to talk to who will give you 80% of what they're doing, but not quite the rest. But if you read between the lines, because the problem is if they publish it great, But now you can't use it, and they're stuck now too, not being able to use that because it's burned everybody. So it's unfortunate, but it's just part of the landscape, which is honestly, in a way, it's a good problem.
Yeah.
If the defensive products are getting better, great.
Yeah.
That's what we want,
Yeah.
right? We don't want to disparage that, but it's by no means trivial like it once was.
Yeah, I've heard CrowdStrike with all the add-ons is a bit of a scary prospect at the minute.
That's one of the toughest ones we went up against.
Cool, Tim. I promise you an hour. We've just gone over. Thanks for your time. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have, or have we about covered everything?
I think everything we could have.
Yeah, good. Listen, thanks for your time. It's been really good. I think the listeners would have really enjoyed it and taken some good self-development gains. And now I'll see you soon, buddy.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Cheers.